Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Film Angle. My name is Chris.
And I'm Alex.
I'd like to address something really quickly, Alex. I think we should give ourselves a little pat in the back. We made it through, well, we started pretty early in the year, venturing into the world of podcasting. And I think there's still a lot of growth left to be done, and I'm really excited for the new year. I think we've done really well. I mean, I think I was proud to even get past about 10 episodes, let alone what are we on now, 38. So
Hey, yeah, no, definitely. Not even a year in. I think there's a statistic that says most podcasts don't get past their 25th episode, and yeah, here we are on our 38th. So we have the stamina. And then we'll go into the new year trying to hit some more. But yeah, I mean, our little Spotify rap thing came out, which is very nice. Everybody was getting theirs as well. But yeah,
yeah,
we've recorded 1,600 minutes of content. We've been streamed in 13 countries, so I think that's pretty cool. And then the weirdest stat
mm,
um, was the top 30% most followed. We're in the top 30% of most followed podcasts, so
yeah, yeah. That
that's
was
quite
quite
nice.
surprising, actually.
Um, yeah, maybe there's a few people I don't know who are following the podcast.
Some
I
ghost
assumed I
listeners,
knew
yeah.
everyone. But yeah, no, you should definitely jump on the Spotify Q&A things and let us know who you are and stuff. We're the top podcast for 11 of you, so thank you very much.
We really appreciate people, checking in and listening every week. Obviously, you're engaging with it, and that's really fun. But yeah, we obviously in the new year we'll set ourselves a lot of new goals and challenges, and and be reinvigorated. And hopefully, the movies that come out in the next couple of months will reinvigorate us and get us really excited and amped about movies. Because I think 2022, while largely successful, has been a bit of an up and down year. I think that's kind of the residual effect of COVID a little bit. But we've had some really good gems peppered throughout the year. But yeah, I think we've got better things to come, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely, and we've just been planning our kind of recording schedule for the end of the year, and we'll have a year in
Mhm.
review coming out at the very start of January, so that we've crammed in those must-see watches before we go, including Avatar 2, which I know we're both very excited for.
Yes, and this time we'll be seeing together, which is a very rare occasion. I think the last movie we saw together, well, actually, it was Decision to Leave, and then before that was Multiverse of Madness. So I think that's the only two things we've seen together this year. So it'll be really exciting, especially for a
Yeah.
big movie like this. Yeah, hopefully people will be tuning in to hear
Well,
that.
yeah, because I stopped watching films with you, Chris, after we went and saw Cats together. Because nothing's been the
Yes.
same since Cats, and I
It was
just don't
literally
want to
Cats
jinx
came out.
it.
We went to see Cats in the new year, and then COVID dropped pretty soon after. I think weeks after, and yeah, I think we've got a bit of a running theory between me and Alex, that we pretty sure that Tom Hooper started COVID. Um, Cats was just so traumatic for everybody that it left the world in a complete disarray.
Life's never been the same. Life's never been the same.
um,
There's
well,
before
no,
Cats and there's after Cats.
every time I think about cats, I just think about, oh my goodness, there's a movie that exists where Judy Dench licks her own crotch. And Ian McKellen says, meow, 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 meow. So
Yeah.
that's out there in the world for everybody to stream and watch for eternity.
Oh man, no comment. No comment on Cats.
Anyway,
I'm
we're not
so
here to
glad
talk
we
about
weren't doing the
cats.
podcast back then.
I actually think I would have been. We might return to cats one day. I think there's a chance.
I'm never watching it again.
Top five
I'm
worst
never watching
musicals of
it.
all time. Um,
You're gonna screw me with it in films that streaming should forget.
I'm going to
Episodes.
squeeze it in somewhere. I'm going to get it in there somewhere. But I think today we are talking about a new movie that's kind of came out last few weeks. We managed to catch up with it in the last week, so we're really excited to talk about it. It's Luca Guadagnino's new film, which is an adaptation called Bones and All, starring Timothy Chalamet and Taylor Russell. I was really excited for this. This is kind of one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I feel like you're similar because we're both big Luca fans.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those films where I was going to see it because it had it was directed by Luca Guadagnino, whose last two films, at least, Call Me by Your Name and
Hmm.
Suspiria, have been some of my favorite films of the last few years. Especially Call Me by Your Name, I absolutely adore that film.
Yes.
And yeah, so I was ready to watch anything he was in. I'm a big fan of Timothy Chalamet as well. I think he's a brilliant actor. But it was like one of those films where I hadn't really like seen the trailer, and like just before I went to see the cinema, I caught like a brief like minute trailer just to kind of get a vibe. For better or worse, I don't know. Um, Sometimes you don't want to see the trailers, but I was intrigued. I was intrigued as to like potentially what I was getting myself into, and it was more of a mood thing. But yeah, it was one of those films which like I always knew was coming, but I wasn't hyped. But I knew I was going to go see it. I was just ready to see what good old Luca was going to bring us this time.
I think it was one of those movies that like released stills from the movie like months way before even any trailer came out. So we kind of had it in our we kind of had a visual of what the movie looked like even a year before we got to see it. And
Mm.
sometimes that can kind of amp you up and build up expectations because you're anticipating something so much. I think that happened with me for Dune last year, where I was just seeing so much, and it was being teased and teased so slowly and delayed that you end up almost formulating the movie in your mind before you actually end up going to see it, which can sometimes be a hindrance and not a fault in the movie itself, but you bring something to it. It's something you can't help. But I kind of knew
It
what to
also
expect. Yeah, go for it.
no, I was going to. It also had that strange connection to the fact that this film was kind of announced as being filmed at the same time some cannibalism accusations were thrown at you know previous co-star
Yeah,
of Timothy Chalamet and Luca Guadagnino, Army Hammer. Like it was kind of like one of those things of like
yeah.
it's weird that he's being accused of these things, and at the same time, the next film from Guadagnino was a cannibal film. It was kind of like one of those like that is a weird coincidence.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, yeah, I completely forgot about that whole thing. I mean, are those allegations? Are they? I haven't really delved into the whole Army Hammer thing. I
I
know
think
there was a
there's
documentary made by his family. Was his aunt produced a documentary called House of Hammer that's actually on Disney Plus, kids.
oh, is it? I didn't know it was
Yeah, I
even
think
on
it's
there.
a National Geographic, isn't it?
I think the accusations of cannibalism were very much a Twitter kind of pile on thing from a few texts that were kind of revealed. Um, I
Mhm.
think Army Hammer's in a lot more kind of deep water because of more serious accusations, which might have some weight towards them, but obviously we don't know. So,
Mhm.
but not cannibal related.
We won't be seeing "Call Me by Your Name" too. That's for sure.
Well, probably, at least not with Army Hammer. At least not with Army Hammer, I think. At this moment in time, but yeah,
Hmm.
not looking good.
So yeah, I kind of knew what to expect going into Bones and All. Um, kind of based on the trailer alone, Luke is quite well known in my eye for his pacing. He is somebody who takes his time, and movies don't really naturally go in a three-act structure. Like other movies do, his movies kind of follow a naturalistic tone where the scenes take as long as they need to, really, and you're going to be more existing in the space and flowing through it, and it's a bit more in the headspace of the characters. So that's something I really like about his movies, and I something going into this I was really expecting, and I feel like it really delivered.
Yeah, I think he very much is good at conjuring up feelings from his films. Like you said, it's a lot more kind of ethereal. I think you get a you get into a headspace of a character, or he's very much good with, kind of the feeling of the setting, the
Hmm.
kind of vibes, like the glorious sunlit Italy of Call Me by Your Name, or the dark and grungy war torn Berlin in Suspiria. And then here it's this kind of slice of Americana tinged with this kind of drifter, um,
Yes,
violent kind of, but mysterious
exactly.
characters that kind of inhabit the setting. It's very interesting, very interesting.
And the cinematography for this movie is gorgeous. It's one of the standout things about it. I think you're right with that sort of tone. I think being set in the late 80s that this movie is set in, it actually feels like you're watching a movie that came out from around that time. It looks like an old movie. It's got that grainy look and filter to it. It has a bit more like, it feels like you're watching a cult movie from about 25 years ago, which is something which is just great to bathe in of itself, even when the narrative comes to a bit of more of a PSE, a bit more thoughtful tone where we're just kind of relaxing with the characters. You're still really enjoying just the vibe that the movie creates, and I think that's really got a lot to do with the sight and sound. The score is really interesting in this too. It's got a beautiful sort of slow melodic guitar solos for this that are like two or three themes that reoccur, and they really stick with you even after the movie. I was kind of thinking about the tunes in my head, and they really just match the characters and what they're going for. But I think we should probably go into the what the story is about, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And also, I would very much like to discuss the opening scene with you, Chris, because I think the opening
It's good.
of this film is one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah, no, it is a great opening. So I was one of the first things I came out saying to Lauren when we went to see it last night. I was bowled over by it was it's a proper prologue. It's like a book prologue.
It sets up these characters perfectly. Obviously, if you are intending to see this anytime soon, block your ears. But this is only the first 5 minutes of the film I'm about to be talking about. But we meet Taylor Russell's character at a school. She's clearly new there. She wants to make new friends. She's invited over to a friend's house, which she kind of sneaks out of her dad's place and goes over there. And it's almost like a sleepover. Everything's going well. They're chatting under the table, getting their nails painted, and the girl shows her nails to um, Taylor Russell's character, and you think she's admiring them, and then all of a sudden she goes into what looks like she might be sucking the finger of the girl, and
Yeah,
then she
it
bites
seems
down,
almost sexual at the
and
beginning. Yeah,
it's kind of like, and the noise and the sound and the gore is just like,
yeah,
oh yeah, it feels very real. There's something that kind of like taints the violence throughout, and the gore is that it's very realistic, to the point where it's quite stomach churning at times. But
mm,
yes, she runs back to her dad, and all of a sudden, like, without having to have all the like, you've done it again, he's like, pack your bags, we need to go. He's clearly aware of this. They're clearly on
yeah.
the run,
It's not the
and
first time
clearly
this
she's
has
struggling
happened.
with this thing. It's this brilliant kind of like
Mm,
opening, and like I said to you, I didn't really know. I knew a basic storyline. I'd seen a mood trailer, as I would call it. I did not know that Taylor Russell's character was a cannibal. I assumed Timothy Chalamet was, so I didn't really know anything more than
okay,
that. So
interesting.
this was quite a shocking intro to her character for me, and I was a big fan of that opening. I was completely hooked from that moment forward.
See, that's really interesting because I remember I don't know what trailer you saw, but whenever I saw the trailer, um, I remember she actually the biting the finger thing was actually in the trailer. So unfortunately,
No,
that kind of yeah, that unfortunately gave it away. Um, but even before we get to that scene, it does this really good job at kind of intriguing you. When her dad picks her up from school, it's a sort of like it is sort of like a father daughter relationship, but they feel more like friends. There's a bit more of just like a neutral sort of respect. She's a little bit weird. I mean, I think this is the way Taylor Russell plays the character, and I think it's a genius way that she plays the character. Very unconventional in the fact that she's quite jittery, and she's not necessarily sad, and she's not really happy at the same time. She's just kind of a little bit sort of disassociated of everything going around her. She plays it in almost like a wide-eyed child, newborn child who hasn't seen the world before. And this is
I
a
feel
decision
like
I think.
she's almost.
No, I think as the movie goes along even further, that makes sense more and more and more. But it's very interesting from the beginning, and it's interesting when we get into the house when she's going to bed, and there's already sort of procedures going on here. She goes to lock her. Well, she goes to her bedroom, and her dad goes behind her, and there's already a lock there that obviously is used frequently, and he locks the door subtly behind her. And then she escapes through the window, and we're already kind of wondering like what's going on. There's procedures here, something's happened before. This isn't the first time. We're late in the story here, and so
Yeah.
like you said, it's just a perfect prologue to kind of get us in there. But I think I'm interested to talk about her performance as we go along, talking about the plot.
I, th- from her performance, you say about her kind of dissociative nature towards some of the violence. I think she's almost traumatized,
Mm,
and she doesn't know how to deal with it, and that's obviously sent her into some kind of bout of depression. But obviously, throughout the film, it's her trying to understand Timothy Chalamet's character, who's completely disassociated with any of the kind of emotional side of
hmm
killing people, essentially. I thought it was really interesting. Like, not to change the subject, but I just thought it was super interesting that there was a whole lore to these cannibals. They were almost treated like vampires in a vampire film, or zombies. There's rules, and there's a community and all this kind of stuff. And that really I did not
mm.
expect.
It teased you with other members of the community. Well, not community. It's more like um, they're all sort of outsiders and they keep themselves, and we're hinted that some of them might stick together, some of them might not. But it's interesting. It kind of reminded me a lot of the Doctor Sleep adaptation, where it was kind of like other people who had the Shining, like Danny, but they hunted and preyed upon other people, and some you get see other sides of people who have these powers, and not all of them are good. Some of them use and abuse them like people would in real life. But the lore in this movie isn't fleshed out so much that we're sick of it. We get
No.
just a little bit of everybody that we get an idea of who they are. We're intrigued by who we are. We're scared by who they are, but we don't necessarily know everything about them. And that's what's so kind of interesting. It's your POV is Taylor Russell in this movie, and you're going through the motions like she is.
And you're almost witnessing her seeing the different outcomes that she could become. It's this kind of road trip movie, meeting other cannibals, and each cannibal treats their addiction, illness, disease, whatever you want to call it, differently. Some are happy with it, some are sad with it, some have gone crazy because
hmm
of it. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of, she was basically saying you could be any one of these, or you could figure it out on your own. Like, what path are you gonna take?
Yeah, I think the harder part about it is because no matter what, it's a taboo, and it's something that's not going to be accepted. I mean, I think Chalamet gives Russell's character an ultimatum near the end of the movie, where it's you can either succumb to this, or you can kill yourself, or you lock yourself up, and those are the three options. And
Yeah,
navigating her way through that, I think it's interesting. After the prologue, her and her dad obviously have to move house again because she's just bit a finger off a girl, and they can't stick around for long. So it feels like the 20th or 100th time that they've had to move house. It feels like this is a thing that's happened before, and they've moved somewhere else. But it feels like this is the last straw for dad. He is left her a note, some money, and a cassette player with a recording of how he sums up how she is and how she needs to find herself, and that he's going to leave her to figure it out. And it's a really good framing device that we get little tidbits of this recording as she listens to it throughout the movie. Because I think it works narratively as well, because she's not in the place where she can feel strong enough to hear it all at once. So it's really good that it breaks the movie apart that way. That really, really worked for me.
definitely. And I was surprised by how long it took to even meet Timothy Chalamet's character
As
after
was
that.
I.
You
Yeah.
know, Luca Guadagnino's not a director who will succumb to star power. Clearly, he's still character and story first. I think you put it in the hands of a lesser director, and they're going to want to bring Timothy Chalamet in within the first 10 minutes.
B-
And he's
but
great.
yeah.
Obviously, he's clearly proven himself to be a brilliant actor, and he's excellent here as always. But yeah, I thought
And
it was quite interesting to see at the point he turns up.
And to Chalamet's credit, by the end of the movie, you feel like he's been in the whole movie. So it's not like we don't get enough of Chalamet. He definitely, it definitely becomes a star-crossed lover sort of thing. But I'd like to really touch on Mark Rylance. I think everybody could agree the creepiest performance of the year. Um, Pretty soon after Taylor Russell is left by her dad and she's left to fend for herself and travel around and tried to navigate this thing that she's going through. She comes across this character who is called Sully, who speaks in third person, and we don't know really what to think about it. It's like he can smell her, so we get a little bit of lore there that he can smell her and he's located her this way. He says like I smelt you from 3 blocks away from the backyard, and we're already kind of put on edge because it's an older man in the middle of the night. He kind of speaks in a very strange
Sort of
and
way.
she hasn't met anybody like herself before, so this is kind of her first realization. So I think it makes sense that she trusts him to a certain degree, or not necessarily trust him, but is curious enough to see what he's about and to explore herself a little bit further. But as an audience member watching him, Mark Rylance plays it in such a way that although it sort of dips into caricature, it's
Mm.
restrained enough where you're like, I do not know if this guy has bad intentions or good intentions. It's almost like I'm watching a really grown child, like a baby who doesn't really understand himself, but also is really smart too. So I didn't know if his intentions were bad or good, and that's what makes like those things really intense. That you don't know where this guy is
Yes.
going.
Yes. Yeah, I thought the same. He definitely kind of lulls the audience into a false sense of security at times. Mark Rylance, I think his recent kind of character acting roles, he really
Don't look
takes some
up.
swings, and it's very interesting. Yeah, Don't Look Up, Ready Player One. He takes some swings. He takes
Hmm.
some swings. Um, and I think it's a hit here. I've seen some people maybe saying he's one of the lesser elements of the film.
Oh no,
It
no.
feels like he's in a different film, but I didn't get that. You know, this is a very interesting film, full of interesting characters, and he's just one of the kind of inhabitants of this world that just so happens to have cannibals in it,
Yeah.
and it's a thing.
We also meet another two interesting characters that they share a couple of beers around a fire pit with. One of them being David Gordon Green, who
Yeah.
directed the recent Halloween trilogy. Yeah, that's a quite interesting encounter too. And again, that's
Yeah.
another thing where they don't overstuff you. They also make you question their intentions too. It's very tense. Like you people are in black and white in this movie. I think that's the thing, and
Yeah.
people are comfortable with each other, and as soon as like you don't want to be on board with what they're selling, they kind of turn on you. Or as soon as I think it's more not that. I think it's whenever they are reminded how demonic they're being or how
Mm.
sinister they're actually being, that's when they kind of are a bit defensive and lash out. That kind of seemed like a threat to
How
me.
how on board were you with the relationship between Taylor Russell and Timothy Chalamet? Because as much as I'm on board with the film, I think the film is quite difficult to emotionally connect to. So I wouldn't say I was rooting for either of the characters. It's one of those things where the film is so violent and some of the acts of violence are so ruthless that it's really difficult to be like, I can emotionally connect with these people. Did you struggle at all with that, or were you fully on board with their kind of romance?
You're talking from a morality point of view, the acts that they're committing.
Yeah.
Um, See, it's hard. I think I'm
And
existing
how
in the
did you
space of this.
emotionally connect?
I'm existing in the space of this movie. Um, on their part, I think they're contrasted with people in this world who want to do these acts, who can't help their inhibitions and actually kind of welcome their inhibitions and they want to just devour people. Where these two people are really working it out and have good hearts. I think Chalamet, he does a couple of, nasty moments in this movie, but they're usually fueled by hate, resentment, or um, seeing a
Necessity.
yes, exactly, or
Yeah.
seeing a side of his father. His father comes into the movie quite a bit, and I think he sees parts that were negative about his father in the men around him, which he lashes out. That kind of was a thing that kind of stuck out to me. Taylor Russell, she just seems to be like somebody who does not know what's kind of going on with her. It's like a really deep sexual desire. It's kind of like that thing that happened in the film Raw, the French film from
Yes.
2017, where it is not something that is intended or premeditated. It is something that happens in spare of the moment. It is just like losing yourself. It's like being drunk in the party and kissing your flipping girlfriend's mum or something like that. It's something stupid, ridiculous like that. And yeah, no, I was bowled over by their relationship by the end of the movie. It does a really big swing. In its last moments where he has a certain song choice, and I actually fell like putty in its hands. I could see it not working for a lot of people, but I think if you go for the ride, um, no pun intended, that um, it definitely works for you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I was on board with the story. I'm in the world. But yeah, I don't think emotionally connecting with these characters was something I was able to do, and that's not a detriment to the film. I think the gore and the violence was so real for me that I felt it difficult to root for them. I was happy to watch them. I was happy to be a voyeur, but I don't think I was rooting for them. But
So
neither was I hoping that they would die or anything like that. I
yeah,
was just very much a fly on the wall in this without kind of any I wasn't like, I hope they get away. I mean, there's an element near the end of the film where you're like, well, I hope they can deal with it and have some sense of normality. But
sin turns different.
yeah,
uh,
it's difficult. It's difficult, and but yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think you are in Taylor Russell's shoes throughout a lot of the film. You are just this sponge that is taking in all this information and trying to figure out how you feel about it. Like you said, very similar to Raw. Do I like what I'm doing or do I not? I'm very conflicted with this. It's very interesting. There was a lot of Raw in it. There was a lot of Badlands in it, I thought. Bit Terrence
yes.
Malick at times. And yeah, I think a little bit of Twilight, the genre
Yeah.
lovers coming together, and she teaches him how to feel again.
Although I don't feel like it's as cheesy with it, that material, as
It's not as
Twilight.
cheesy, but you could definitely put this story into like a young adult book format, and I think a
Well,
lot of
that's the
people would
thing,
vibe with
isn't
it.
it?
It's adult Twilight, I think. It's extreme Twilight.
Well, that's the thing. The book actually only came out in 2015 that this is based on, it's a YA novel of
Oh,
the same
oh,
name.
I didn't know. I see. I knew it was based on a book, but I didn't know it was YA. So there you go. There you go.
So there you go.
See?
Yeah, you probably I haven't read the material myself, but from what I've heard from people, this actually matures it a little bit more. But I think you're right. I think because the nastiness of the bloody scenes, the movies got got that in it definitely, but the moments are kind of really earned and far between. But whenever they do happen, they're pretty shocking. I mean, the way that even blood, I think it's the way the blood looks. It's not necessarily like you're seeing the grossest body horror ever. It's just the way the blood looks on people's skin and the way it flows and everything. It's so real and it looks like actual blood. Like, I mean, how often can you see a movie and you're like, yeah, that's like crimson color blood. No one actually CGI blood. Nobody bleeds like that. But in this, it's like people are flipping drenched from head to toe. Like you see absolutely devouring sessions, and then after you see the aftermath, and Taylor Russell's hair is just like dried blood and flaking off her skin, and the clothes. It's cool to watch as a cinematic. I'm pretty desensitized to things like that, so it doesn't bother me that much. the finger thing got me because I don't like crunching bones or anything like that. Whenever I hear
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, my toes curl a little bit. But in general, like, no, it was really good. But yeah, I think that was a precedent that he set with his Suspiria remake, and I think that was actually a bit more of a harder to watch body horror experience. That had some really gross stuff in it.
See, I think Suspiria was still like more fantastical. It was still more movie like violence to
The
me.
all the
I didn't
bone
have the
stuff.
same. Yeah, I mean it's not nice, but like I didn't have the same feeling here. Like the body wounds and anything like anything fleshy in this film looks so
Yeah.
real that I mean I
Yes, there's
again
like
I'm pretty desensitized to film violence, but I was just there were bits of it I was like, oh god, I can't like it was difficult. I was watching, but it wasn't easy, you know.
there's that scene where Chalamet lures the guy from the fairground attraction, and he offers to meet them, and they kind of make out, and then he takes him into the cornfield, and then him and Taylor Russell, after he knifes him in the neck, they absolutely chow down on him. And there's a bit where his teeth are clenched onto the guy's skin, as his stomach or something, and you can see him pull it, like ribbons of flesh coming off
Yeah.
skin. And you're right, it looks so real, even though it's obscured by like a light and shadow thing. It's still like, it's too rare. And I think I love about this movie is, and especially in the prologue, where she's running away from the house after she's bit the girl's finger off, right? And you get these beautiful, candid, creepy shots. Like there's the shot of the pylon where Taylor Russell's running into the grass into the distance, and it's just like natural lighting, and it's like a spotlight on her, and it's like this really candid photography. It almost looks like, you've caught somebody trying to steal from your house in the middle of the night, and you shine a light on them. It's that sort of like, it's really exposed, really in the moment, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. It's like you're watching something you shouldn't be seeing. And I love that sort of visual element to this movie. But I would say with Suspiria, what made those moments worse, and I think it trumps this movie for the gore and the horror. In that movie, being a coven of witches, and they've got really malintent, and the horror and the torturous scenes that come in that movie come from a real place of real malevolence and coldness that makes it even worse. Where in this movie, it's more like necessity. So I can kind of get on board with it a little bit more. I
Yeah,
don't
it's more
like
of an
people. I don't like
impulse
people
than an
being mean.
urge.
Yeah, I don't like people being mean.
That's fair. I mean, like Suspiria is more of a horror film. This has got horror elements to it, but
Yes.
is very much not a horror. I would say it's
Yeah.
quite dark, but
It's an
probably
indie
not to
drama road
the
trip
the
romance. Yeah.
final kind of act, or maybe one would call the epilogue, where it kind of turns into a bit more of your conventional,
Hmm.
um, ending horror
Did
act.
you?
You know,
Oh, I like the twist. I like the third act.
Oh, I like third act too. I like
Yeah.
I don't even know if you call it third act. It was such a short moment of the
No.
film, but it concludes it. It's interesting. I
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think we should talk about the ending where it's brought up in the movie in the midpoint where they meet the two weird guys at the fire pit, in the middle of the woods. They talk about, you're not really a true. They don't name what this is. It's not cannibal. It's like you're something else, right? It's unspoken in this movie what they actually are and what the nature it is, if it's supernatural or not. But you're not truly a real eater until you have consumed somebody whole, hence the title Bones and All. And it becomes a
Roll
real sort of
credits.
like thing that what, sorry?
I said roll the credits.
Yeah, roll the credits. And yeah, Robert's written and directed by Robert Zemeckis. It becomes a shadow that kind of hangs over the movie, kind of very faintly in the background. And then at the end of the movie, it does a really, like, it goes for it here, where Chalamet has been knifed in the tussle with Sully at the end of the third act, where he comes in and he
Spoilers.
try spoilers, but we said at the start. We said at the start. Um, so there's a real tussle that goes on there. I won't spoil all that because that's worth seeing by itself. But at the end of it, Chalamet is fatally wounded. He gets punctured in the lung with a knife, and he's dying in Taylor Russell's arms. And he requests of her to devour him and eat him, bones and all. And in any other movie, this would seem like the most eye-rolling, cringy thing ever. And it even goes for a really audacious music choice in the background that is completely different to the rest of the movie. But it feels right. It feels really earned, and it's actually kind of like the most emotional part of the movie, where you're like, yeah, like fucking yeah, eat him. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's
it's
true. You are there
it,
like, yeah, you gotta do it, girl, bones and
it's
all.
so it becomes like one of the sweetest moments of the year. It's really strange.
Mm.
I know it is.
Sweetest
No,
moments of the
in the
year. I'm
world,
not sure about.
no, yeah. In reality, right, right. Yes, come on, I'm not accountable, guys. Um, and the reality that this movie exists in, you put yourself in the world of this movie and the rules that it sets out, it works. It really works, and it bowled me
It
over
is.
by the end, and it earned its extra half a star for
There you go. There you go.
me. So yeah, no, I was a really big fan of this movie. I think it's really worth seeing. I think if you're a Luca Guadagnino fan and you like his pacier, more thoughtful movies, and yeah, definitely check this out. I think you'll like it as well. What was this? What was your audience like that you saw it with? Did they get a few giggles?
I was in an audience with two other people,
Oh right,
so difficult to go. I don't think there was any giggles. I think me and my partner Em, we looked at each other a couple times like, oh, uh, but no, I don't. I can't remember what the other audience. I couldn't really
there
get a
was
grasp of what the other two people in my screening were thinking.
there was probably about 20 to 25-ish people in our screening, which I was pretty
Wow,
surprised. Plymouth brought it that
Plymouth.
day. Yeah, Plymouth wanted to see a Luca Guadagnino film. I
I
went to
don't
see
know whether to be
Suspiria.
happy or concerned.
When I went to see Suspiria in 2018, I went to see it by myself after work, and two other people were in the screen,
Mm.
and they were together. They were a couple. They walked out halfway through that movie, and then I was left by myself. Um, which is actually a really good way to watch that movie. But
See, we had opposite screenings of these Luca Guadagnino films. My Suspiria screening was in the Watershed, where it was clearly a packed audience at the time. I think
oh
it was probably sold
yeah,
out. And
which would have been
yeah,
the
and then
same for Booms and
obviously,
All.
yeah, probably would have if I'd ventured down that way. I probably should have supported my local independent cinema guys. So that's a you
Yeah, but
you all
you're
should, but I was still reeling from the effects of my car crash.
yeah, you're still you're
Take a
still in that
shot,
cast right now.
take a shot, guys, take a shot.
So yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page, Alex. We both really recommend Bones and All. Please check it out,
Yep.
support it while it's on. Because I feel like this. I haven't seen the box office numbers for this, but it feels like a movie that's going to underperform, um, just by the nature of it alone. But it's definitely worth seeing. I think a lot of people will like it, and I think it will find its audience in the next couple of years, especially when it goes to streaming. I think it's going to be one of those ones that picks up a following, especially when you have a big star like Chalamet, and as he continues to grow too. So yeah, definitely check it out if you like those sort of like movies that kind of take you back to the 80s and 90s with those sort of cultish vampire flicks. You've got a new one. Do you ever find like it's really hard to talk about movies that you really like? That sometimes like the ones that you give a 5 star to, or like those really your top movies of the year are actually, it's kind of hard to articulate why you feel so passionate about them. And it's much more easier to talk about a movie that gets things wrong. Um, I just
That's
find that.
true. That's true. I think, but like something like Bones and All is a film that I very much liked, and that's almost more difficult to review than a film that I very much love. Do you know what I mean?
Because you can't put your finger on why it doesn't necessarily get to the 100% and why it's only eighty
Yeah.
percent.
And you're like, no, I really liked it. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't hit in that way. But I mean, if you want to talk about films that didn't hit for me in a way I wanted them to, segue. I did
Okay.
catch up with the Roku release. Their kind of big star power film at the moment. The
Yeah.
weird, the Al Yankovic story, I think is the true title. I just keep
Weird.
calling it
It's
the
weird.
Weird
The
Al
Al
film.
Yankovic story. Yeah.
Yeah, which promised to be this kind of very tongue in cheek parody of basically music biopics.
Mm,
Now, I was quite excited because I am a big fan of Weird Al, and I was quite excited by the fact that it was doing, it was continuing the almost kind of like stupidity of Weird Al's whole career and fame, and kind
yeah.
of continuing that in film form in a very tongue in cheek way, and it does have some good laughs. It does have some good laughs, but it didn't truly hit the mark with me. It gets a bit carried away with its irreverence by the end of the
Right.
film, and yeah, just it didn't provide me with the full laughs that I wanted. It was made by the Funny or Die. I don't even know what they are. Are they a website now? What are Funny or Die? They're clearly a production company of some sort now.
Yeah.
But we've all
Yeah.
we've all seen the sketches. We've all seen a Funny or Die sketch at some point in our life, I would say. Um, and it felt like a too like a felt like a very long Funny or Die sketch, and it's not awful or anything like that. It just wasn't what I wanted it to be. It wasn't what I expected it to be, and just didn't provide enough laughs to kind of take away that disappointment that I felt. Again, not a bad film. The disappointment comes from my own, expectations, rightly or wrongly. But
Last time I was at your house, you were showing me Weird Al clips, and showing me like why you were so excited for this movie. But no, I'm with you too, and I think because Radcliffe is such in a fuck it part of his career where he'll just like do things that are off kilter, makes it exciting too. I think everybody
yeah,
really likes Radcliffe,
oh yeah,
myself included. I'm in that camp too, and especially
such a
take
good
on
dude.
somebody that it's like you're watching two people you love on screen, aren't you? You're watching Weird Al and you're watching Radcliffe, and that you're watching these two personalities you love come together, and you want to see how much Daniel really leans into that performance. So that's kind of the real draw for me. Yeah, I could see probably why. Like, I saw the trailer. I can't really remember it too much, but I remember the tone was like really like it's on like sherbet. It's like it's on sugar sticks. It's kind of really kind of hyper. And whether if it's going for that tone, if it sustains that the whole way, like you're right. Even if it's like you say Funny or Die sketch, but even if I'm watching like a Key and Peele sketch, those things are funny as hell. But after about four, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna watch something else.
Oh, disagree with Kim Peel there, man. I call Sean there.
Yeah, to be sorry, I should revise 4 or 5 to about 20.
Yeah, no, it does feel like an overdrawn sketch that kind of loses itself near the end. Some of the earlier stuff is really good. Him coming up with, the stupid kind of biopicky ways that he comes up with songs and stuff is really stupid, and that
All
gets the
right, light
best
bulb
laughs.
moments galore. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's very stupid, and that is, those moments are my favorite moments. But it takes a bit of a turn near the end of the film, and maybe this was their way of being like, well, the music biopic parody has been done before, and it's been done really well by Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox film,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, I mean that film still reigns as there's the height of music biopic parodies. Who
hundred
knew there was
percent.
there was going to be a genre?
Last summer for a week straight, I dug up the Walk Hard Dewey Cox soundtrack, and I
Oh,
genuinely listened to it for like a good 3 days because the songs, even though they're funny and parody songs, they are so good.
they're so good. I had that album, man. I
I
was
sing them
so
around the
into
house
Walk Hard.
sometimes.
Oh, it was so good. I might need to get that film out again. I love
Guilt,
that film.
yeah, guilty as I go around the house sometimes just singing "Guilty as Charged." We'll definitely return to
Oh,
that one day. But yeah, like that, you're right. It did it once before, and like I think Popstar never stopping. Is that right? Pop star never stop
Yes.
stopping. Yes.
Never stop.
The
Never stop stopping.
that was a really successful sort of another kind of twist on the modern music documentary, kind of
Mm-hmm.
making fun of those, that we had a lot of those straight to 3D, watch the Jonas Brothers or Justin Bieber, like, oh, hi, they're a star, arena tour, but that documentary, whatever. And that was really funny. But you're right. The one that does it right is the definitive version of that. Um, yeah, it's hard to, lightning doesn't really strike twice. And whenever you get to something like Weird Al, I haven't seen it yet, but I can imagine it gets more bogged down in the plot in the third act, where it probably has to, the funny elements start to kind of whittle away.
I
Or
think.
not? Am I getting the wrong?
I think it gets carried away. I think it gets carried away in the third
Oh,
act.
okay.
But maybe I've tempered your expectations a bit, and you might go in and really enjoy it. I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from seeing this film, because I think comedy is very subjective, and you might find a lot of joy in it. And I think you should definitely report back once you've seen it, Chris.
But yeah, I think that wraps it up for now. I think we got some really exciting episodes. As we've been saying, we've got the calendar up and going. We've got next week coming up. We're going to talk about our top 5 Christmas movies. So that'll be really interesting. We're going to, again, this time, keep it secret from each other and do a countdown reveal on the next episode. And again, it always really interests me because I like to think I know you, but I think there'll be one or two that we might get similar, but I think there's a lot more Christmas movies than you actually think when you get down to it.
This one I'm really gonna have to think about. Christmas films aren't my forte. I know what my number one is,
Hmm.
but everything else I'm gonna have to figure out. I think I know the number one. I know it. I know it straight away. I don't even have to think about it.
I know
Two,
you're
three,
number
four,
one.
five. 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to figure out.
The thing about Christmas is Christmas is so different to everybody, and we all have different emotions towards Christmas and memories towards Christmas. For me, it changes and evolves every year, where I feel
Hmm.
different depending on where I am as a human being. So that transfers onto movies too. And sometimes, like, what has been historically 10 years ago was my favorite Christmas movie is not my favorite Christmas movie anymore. Well, similar to you, probably my 2 to 5. My number one is always stayed consistent, and I doubt it will ever change. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to revealing what that is. Dolly Parton's Christmas on the Square. I just spoiled
Eesh.
it.
Yeah, no, I saw that one last year, and
Which is
eesh,
actually a fun. I find it fun.
eesh.
Anyway, I think that wraps it up for this week's episode of the Film Angle. Guys, thank you very much for following us this year so far. We look forward to bringing you more episodes in the future. And as we teased before, we'll be wrapping up the year in a future episode and kind of talking about our future plans for what we've got in store for you guys. But for now, you can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Obviously, please make sure to check in on us on Instagram. We'll be much more active on there, and you can interact with us personally. But for now, this has been the Film Angle. My name is Chris.
I'm Alex.
Bye bye. Never, ever, ever eat another eater.